Welcome to R&R Living Life. In this episode we continue on to Katajuka and further on to Yulara, where we set up camp for a couple of days, giving us time to explore Uluru. After leaving Giles Weather Station we followed a small line of cars heading east, staying well out of their dust. The vast desert regions of this part of the country are rich in heritage, from early explorers like Giles, Wells and Forrest, and more recently Len Bedell and his gun barrel construction company. With the Great Central Road slowly developing as a major pathway, having some sections of sealed road already in place, strategically located roadhouses enabling visitors a welcome stop for fuel and supplies, it has been a major trip with long distances and varied road conditions, but a truly amazing experience. We were nearing the end of our journey, but still had to cross into the Northern Territory. The Great Central Road had now become Outback Way and is part of a network of desert highways built under the leadership of the famous surveyor and road builder Len Bedell to service Woomera and the Giles Meteorological Station. We contemplated the challenges faced by those early expeditions, especially in the late 19th and early 20th century without vehicles, but with horses and camels as their only options. Len Bedell, who at the time worked for the Weapons Research Establishment, selected the site for a meteorological station in December 1955, and he and his construction team were responsible for opening up 2.5 million square kilometres of the Gibson, Great Sandy and the Great Victorian Deserts and the Warburton Range stock route. We were travelling through a region of extremely diverse landscapes, with the Western Desert region's physical richness reflected in the astonishing variety of artistic paintings for sale in the roadhouses along our journey. There were some truly colourful and discerning works of art reflecting the culture and connections to the landscape. There is dense sand dune country, ancient mountain ranges, and seemingly infinite spinifex plains. Scattered amongst this sweeping landscape are rock holes, soaks from underground water, creeks, salt lakes, and clay pans that are sites of significance to the indigenous people. We drove through an area of woodland with two distinctive tree shapes, but they looked like the same tree, only to find out that they were both desert oak trees. I was surprised by the majestic tall desert oaks scattered in amongst the tall slender trees, looking like fluffy popsicles, with the different forms, apparently juvenile and adult forms of the same tree. This tree is remarkable. Desert oaks often occur in dense stands or forests, usually on the lower slopes or swales between red sand dunes. The juveniles are thin and straight, looking a bit like a feather duster, with foliage that is prickly so as to deter grazing animals from eating it. The juvenile tree sends down a strong taproot, and when it reaches the water table or a more reliable water supply, they start to change into their adult form by sending out side branches and transforming into a tree with weeping, smooth foliage. When the trees mature, the male flowers and female flowers are borne on separate trees. The bark is thick, dark brown and deeply fissured, making it quite distinctive, while the foliage is long and needle-like. The fruit is a woody cone which is quite decorative. These trees have several adaptations to help them regenerate and tolerate fire, including the thick bark and its ability to regenerate from leaf buds under the bark, and the huge amount of seeds they produce to assist in germination by the ash left after the fires. They also have the ability to shut down and endure when things get tough, and its astonishing ability to capture and store moisture in their root systems. This was the third species of outback tree with remarkable adaptations. The first, the waddy trees in outback Queensland, then the salmon gums in the Esperance Plains and the Great Victorian Desert, and now the desert oaks. We certainly have some amazing trees in Australia. This huge grove of desert oaks took us up to the Giles River, where we pulled up on the eastern side to let a traveller go past, and then onto the Shirin Mural Crescent, a range of hills to the north, and the Petermann Ranges to the southeast, named after the Princess of Shirin by Ernest Giles in 1875. Some might say that this area is pretty dull, especially those that roared past, but there is so much to see, and the landscape is forever changing. A landmark about an hour out of Warracoona was Len Bedell's tree. The metal plaque on the tree was a marker on part of the original gun barrel section that is now the Great Central Road. Len Bedell marked astrofixes along his road with aluminium plates on which longitude, latitude, and other information was stamped. Many of these have sadly been taken as souvenirs. In modern times, a newer road, the Great Central Road or Outback Way, has superseded some of Bedell's original tracks by taking a more direct route, made possible with more modern heavy equipment. However, all of Len's original roads still exist. He said he tried to make wherever possible to make the road as straight as a gun barrel. The road was built with initial reconnaissance and surveyed by Len using a theodolite to observe the sun or stars for latitude and longitude calculations. Once the line of the road had been decided, a bulldozer followed to cut a raw track, clearing away the spinifex and mulga scrub to form the basic level track. This was then graded using a standard road grader. We passed a couple of graders on the road. Such an important job, keeping the roads passable. As we travelled further east, we passed between the Shirin Mural Crescent, a spectacular desert mountain range including Vladimir Pass, Sladden Waters, and the pass of Abencerrages, which links Rawlinson Ranges with the Petermann Ranges, a low mountain range that extends for about 320 kilometres from east central Western Australia to the southwest corner of the Northern Territory. Before us was a stunning sweep of mountain country. At the end of the Shirin Mural Crescent is Jill Pinnacle, part of the Petermann's Range. This dome-shaped hill surrounded by dense mulga with its top bare rock has been used as a landmark for Aboriginal people and explorers. We were now about 30 kilometres from Docker River, Kaltakajara. It was disappointing to see, as the closer we got to Yulara, the numerous signs discouraging campers from camping along the road, even to the point that gravel pits were blocked off by piles of rocks and gravel. On reaching the border at 10:30, we were now in our fifth state for this trip. I was disappointed that there was no West Australian sign, only the Northern Territory one, sadly covered in stickers, so unsightly, as we all want that photo of border crossings or location signs. So much for just leaving our footprints. We have seen some signs so covered that we were unable to read them. Such a shame and unsightly. Even the wooden Great Central Road sign was hidden in the bushes. We stopped and stretched our legs and took the obligatory photo before continuing on Kaltakajara or Docker River. About 6 kilometres from the border, we arrived at the Docker River campground, about 2 kilometres west of the community. There was a lovely campsite set in idyllic, quiet desert location amongst desert oaks, with spectacular views to the hills of the Petermann Range. But, from all reports, it is not the friendliest place to stop, as campers are said to be harassed by the locals. As well, the toilets and showers were locked, which surprised me, as by all accounts the community had set up the campground. It is disappointing to see such facilities go unused and left to go to ruin. The Docker River community is on a wadi or ephemeral riverbed called the Docker Creek, and has a strictly no entry to visitors. About 40 kilometres from Docker River, we stopped at Lassiter's Cave, such an interesting piece of history. Located on the banks of the Hull River, just a little way off the Great Central Road, Lassiter's Cave sits above a wide dry watercourse that passes north through the Mandama Range. We took a stroll just a short way from the car park to view the cave, where gold prospector Lewis Harold Bell Lassiter in 1931 had sheltered from summer heat for 25 days without food after his camels had run away. A sign at the site told of the tragedy that befell him after he got assistance from a friendly Aboriginal who guided him to walk 55 kilometres to Irwin Creek, where he later died. In the unforgiving desert of Central Australia, people have been lured to the area ever since early in the 20th century, when Lassiter publicly and vaguely claimed that an enormous gold-bearing quartz reef existed somewhere west of the McDonnell Ranges. He had revealed his discovery in 1929, 2 years before his death, but had boasted in a letter to an Australian politician that in 1911 he had discovered the gold-bearing reef. No investigation was to follow. Several years later, in July 1930, Lassiter and a team of experts again tried to find the reef, only to suffer constant logistical difficulties and physical hardships, making it to Mount Marjorie, now known as Mount Lucia, before an end was put to the expedition. Lassiter continued on with a dingo hunter and his pack of camels. Again disagreement occurred, with Lassiter setting off even deeper into the bush. Lassiter's body was found in March 1931 by bushman Bob Buck, who had been sent out to look for him. His body was discovered in an area called Winter's Glen, while his personal belongings had been left in a cave at Hulls Creek. We made camp just off the highway, our last free camp on the Great Central Road that had now become the Outback Way. We enjoyed a stunning sunset, followed the next morning by a spectacular sunrise. I cannot get over the pastel colours that paint the sky in the afternoon and early mornings. They truly are amazing. We left camp early and made our way towards the Northern Territory West Australian border. It was disappointing to see how much the Outback Way deteriorated the closer we got to the border, with harsh corrugations constantly changing with width and depth, and muddy sections that people had cut up by driving through the middle of, along with some soft sandy patches. We certainly had to keep our mind on driving, but it was an interesting drive. We said goodbye to the dirt, as we were now on bitumen that would take us all the way to Yulara. Estimated to be over 500 million years old, the 36 weathered domes that are Katajuka sits 40 kilometres to the west of Uluru. Katajuka, or the Olgas, represents nature on a monumental scale, with the cluster's tallest peak, Mount Olga, being 200 metres higher than Uluru, rising to 546 metres. Katajuka covers an area of 21.68 square kilometres, and the distance around the outcrop is approximately 22 kilometres. It is made from a conglomerate of pebbles and boulders cemented by sand and mud. Most of the pieces are granite and basalt, which gives the conglomerate a plum pudding effect. About 600 million years ago, when the Petermann Ranges were much taller than they are now, rainwater flowed down the mountains, eroding sand and rocks and dropping it in fan shapes on the plains. One fan was mainly water-smooth rocks, while the other was mostly sand. Around 500 million years ago, the whole area became covered in sea, where sand and mud fell to the bottom and covered the seabed, including these fans. The weight of the new seabed turned the fans into rock. The sandy fan became the sandstone Uluru, while the rocky fan became the conglomerated rock Katajuka. Around 400 million years ago, the sea disappeared. The rocks folded and tilted as the Earth's tectonic plates shifted, with Katajuka tilting slightly and Uluru tilting 90 degrees. Over the last 300 million years, the softer rocks eroded away, leaving the spectacular form of Uluru and Katajuka behind. Many geologists believe that the 36 small monoliths may have been a single rock formation, which would have been much larger than Uluru. These magnificent rock formations are actually a lot bigger than they appear. Like icebergs, most of their mass is below the surface. What an amazing experience we had walking in the Valley of the Winds, also known as the Walper Gorge Walk. And yes, it was extremely cold and windy. We walked past creek beds that were surrounded by the domes that towered above us. The clearly defined path was easy to follow, as were all the tourists. The view was breathtaking and worth every bit of effort in the cold wind. Walper Gorge itself is a natural creek that's carved its way between the two tallest domes of Katajuka. The path curves its way around a rocky formation and follows a 2.6 kilometre return route that took us directly through the rugged walls of the landmark, where tufts of greenery break up the sprawling red earth. When we looked back over the car park, the landscape seemed to stretch out endlessly to the horizon. These impressive monoliths are huge, and the ancient scenery of unique flora and fauna was amazing. The enormity of the gorge was overwhelming, having to tilt my head back as far as it would go just to see the top. It truly is a sight to behold, even down to boasting a unique ecosystem that acts as a desert refuge for many of the plants and animals that live here. The sheer vastness of these monoliths was staggering. Katajuka is an impressive, surreal sight, and the Walper Gorge Walk let us enjoy it in all its glory. From Katajuka we made our way towards Yulara, stopping in at the Katajuka Dunes Walk, where we took a short walk to a viewing platform with a spectacular panoramic view of Katajuka, with Uluru far away on the right. The land that surrounds Katajuka is really remarkable, as despite low rainfall and poor soils, a great diversity of life has adapted to survive. Several vegetation communities are found here, each supporting many different plants and animals. We stood above the sand dune country, where I learnt more about the amazing dominant desert oak and the scrubland dominated by mulga that grow in the foothills and surrounds of Katajuka. Rocky areas support their own particular habitats, with many specialised species such as kill kangaroo and native tobacco that are found only in shady areas after rain. Along the creek beds where more water sits were large eucalypts. We made camp that night at Yulara, ending our Great Central Road journey with another amazing sunset over Uluru. I hope you have enjoyed our travels across the Great Central Road as much as we have. Give us a thumbs up if you have. Join us next time as we visit Uluru and then check out the South Australian border with the Northern Territory. Take care and stay safe. Cheers for now. Rick and Rosemary. R&R, Living Life.